You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I'm excited to have a groundbreaking guest with us today, Mike Winters, the founder and CEO of Quintaliza Tequila. He is a creator of the world's first coffee-aged tequila. Mike's innovative vision has redefined the tequila industry, blending the rich flavors of premium tequila with the bold essence of coffee for a truly unique tasting experience. In this conversation, we'll explore his journey, the inspiration behind his tasty tequila, and how this one-of-a-kind spirit is pushing the boundaries of tradition. So grab yourself your favorite cocktail and enjoy the show. Mike, welcome to Served Up. I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
I'm super excited to be on the show. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Can you tell our listeners a bit about your background? Where do you come from? Where did you grow up? What is your story? And what led you into this tequila space?
Oh, that's an hour in itself. I came from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, born and raised. Just a great hometown, blue collar town. Came from a great family. My mom and my father, just embarked this passion to just explore and do what felt right. I'm a rambunctious kid, to say the least. High energy, typical boy. But, me, I think, it wasn't until later, I realized that full-blown ADHD since I was a little child. But,
Same. I'm with you on that. With ADHD.
Okay, I thought you were telling me to stop.
Yeah. No, not at all. Keep going, man. I am a kinship to ADHD.
Yep. So, when I was little, it was obviously like, this kid's nuts, but really, I just had a very good imagination, and I really wanted to explore. And I always wanted to challenge everything. I always challenged teachers, and my mom always stood up for me, and my father always told me, well, one day you're going to do something great, and you're going to do something for yourself. I know you will. But I grew up in a household that just embraced working. Like, and same as Pittsburgh, it was a blue collar town. I think everybody was pretty level playing field. All the friends, they had mothers that worked, they had fathers that worked. It was all very level playing field. And grew up in a great time in the 80s and early 90s that really just was allowed children to be children. Right? We just went around and played and explored. I think just me being who I am, the sports I played, playing hockey, it just gets high energy. It was a natural transition to become an entrepreneur and really start doing things for myself. I'm proud to say that actually the first job I had was at a ski shop, but I have not worked for anybody since I was about 20 years old, and I'm 43 now. So I've done quite a bit of different things, and I think that the first company that I started was a medical company that was from my father. He kind of taught me how to do it, and realized college wasn't going to be for me. It was really just something that helped me work with my hands and play with different nuts and bolts and try to put things together, and that was really good for me and good for my mind. And it was then is whenever I started really learning how to utilize my ADHD as my superpower into exploring into different types of businesses. And okay, I can do this now. What can I do next? Right. Fast forward many years, marriage and 2 children later, I jumped into the restaurant space. And in Florida, we moved from Pittsburgh down to Florida. Really loved that world. Just really, again, had this idea of wanting to always own a restaurant, and the high energy really excited me. Had that for a while. My mom and my brother now still run that restaurant, and that's ultimately what kind of got me into this space inadvertently. It transitioned from restaurants into learning how to do importing, because I had a buddy of mine that was starting a tequila brand, and he's like, man, I need someone that understands the red tape and can really dive into learning, how we become a distributor and how we can get our import license. And 6 months later, I had my KLD license in the state of Florida, and away we went. So full dive into it. Knew nothing about tequila. Could tell you I didn't even like tequila. But that's really where that started. And that was about 10 years ago.
You weren't like this huge fan of tequila, but now clearly you very much are. Can you talk about some of those aha moments that you experienced when you first really dove into tequila? And let's talk about what you're doing today.
Sure. I think like the first aha moment I had actually in business was a mobile company I had a long time ago where it took my uncle about 15, 20 years to build up, and it took me about 5 months to destroy. And I think that was my aha moment in business. And I think from that point on, I really, it was a valuable lesson to learn how to approach a business and how to really take my time, learn more, and realize that you don't know everything. So getting into the import space, it was just this take it all in. What kind of knowledge can I learn? What can I learn about tequila? What can I learn about the import space, the distribution space? Who could I talk to? What people could I network with? And really just try and learn. And the reality is there's just so much out there, and there's so many people, especially in this space, this community of spirits that are willing to really have conversations with you and talk about it. And, in a way that's not so much like, I don't want to give away information, more like we're all just a bunch of nerds, right? And we really enjoy it. Like, and I found that like the passion from different distribution companies and different people that I spoke to was, they were excited about it, and they really learned and really liked it. And that was something unique that I never really experienced before. I mean, being in a medical space mostly for, the most of my adult life, that's not something you really heard a lot. People didn't really get a lot excited about, CTs, right? There was not a lot of excitement there. And it was all like, kind of complaining almost. This world here, I found that people were very helpful. So taking those experiences and really just transitioning into this world of like, okay, how do I gather as much information, really helped me in the import side and just take a deep dive. So no, I knew nothing about tequila. No, I didn't even like tequila. But shortly there, after of starting the import company, I started to find a love for it and appreciation for the amount of effort and work that goes into producing it, the history of it, the traditions of tequila. And really, I think I fell in love with just the story of tequila, right? Not necessarily the brands, the money, the branding and the styles and the parties that had nothing to really do with it. I think out of all the spirits, you look at tradition, you look at like whiskey and bourbon and Scotch whiskey, like there's a lot of tradition and heritage in that space, right? And they've been doing these for centuries, and the stories that people tell and the passion, the lives that are spent, making that juice is awesome. People just super really, just super passionate. And I don't know that many of them, that set out to just, oh, I just want to be a billionaire and that's why I'm doing it, right? And then I think you fail right away if that's the goal.
I mean, absolutely. You have to have some passion for the products that you're behind. You absolutely do. And I love that you mentioned like the culture was an aha for you and really, diving all in that changed, your mind.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, like you can fall flat if you walk into a room of people and they're all like, miserable and complaining about what they do and hate it. Like it can be a very, disrupting and, not really exciting to really want to be a part of it. Geez, do I really want to do this? But I think when you started getting in rooms with people that are excited about what's going on, it kind of builds that excitement for yourself. As an importer, I had a great opportunity, and I call it the looky loo, right, into the world of starting a tequila. And some of the things that they've seen success with, and some brands that didn't have so much success with. And I think being a part of those conversations from the brand's perspective, but then also being understanding it from the distribution and import perspective, it really kind of gave me a good angle, all three sides as to how things are going, and what makes sense for the importer doesn't always make sense for the distribution company, and might not always make sense for the importer. I mean, for the brand. But it's really good to know exactly how each person feels in any given circumstance.
Can we talk about your current brand that you're working with, that you're the founder, the CEO, and I don't want to mess up the name, but Quintaliza Tequila?
Close.
The very,
Quintaliza.
say that again.
Quintaliza.
Quintaliza
There you go.
Tequila, the very first coffee aged tequila. I think that that is fascinating. As somebody who's been teaching about tequila for probably 30 years, been to tequila, have studied tequila. And my question to you is, why coffee?
For a lot of reasons. One, I think that anytime you start anything, I don't care if it's a tequila brand or a car company, if you build something that you're passionate about, that you genuinely believe in yourself, it's just going to be that much better. And I think if you build it for yourself, somewhat selfishly, it'll resonate that much more with your audience. If you build it for other people, it doesn't necessarily work, right? Because you really can't be true about it. I love coffee. I'm sitting here drinking coffee now. I feel like I drink probably too much coffee, but I really do enjoy it. In my endeavors, through business, like I mentioned, I had a restaurant. I also became a partner at a coffee shop in 2016 in Miami. In that time, again, ADHD, diving into everything that I do, I just took it all in. Wanted to understand the culture, their traditions of coffee, and the process of roasting. And it's so meticulous. One change of the water temperature or the change of the temperature outside, the air temperature, everything creates so many different varieties of coffee, right? And I think as you start getting deeper into it and become more of a coffee aficionado, you can start picking out like, oh, this is a high altitude coffee or a low altitude coffee. And I think for me, that was step one, is that I just loved coffee. Step two, I combined this newfound passion and tradition of tequila, and I felt that these two worlds were very similar, right? And if that these two worlds could have a conversation, it would be a really deep, conversation. And they're very similar as far as the process and the tradition, and especially if you're talking Chiapas coffee coming from Mexico and you've got agaves coming from Mexico, those two worlds and the process and everything is very similar, right? They have to harvest it, they've got to grow it, they've got to nurture, if they're organic coffee, if they're organic agave, there's the processes in which they need to do in order to keep them organic, and the very expensive process, but it's one that requires a lot of attention and time, and I think that if you get these two worlds and these two groups of people to have conversations, that's extremely special. Number three was that no one's done it, right? No one really took it to a point to where, hey, if we're going to do this, how do I do it in a way that is additive free, remains organic, that is a complement to both traditions, right? We're agave forward, you taste it. We're definitely tequila. We're not liqueur. We're not mixed. We're not blend. We're not infused. We're none of those things. We took a centuries old tradition of aging in barrels, just like a Cabernet barrel or a red wine barrel, or how Scotch whiskeys, they age in all these different types of wood. They get those different notes from the wood, right? And for me, it was okay. Well, how do I bring these notes, these characteristics of the coffee without the use of additives? How can I push that into the wood, so to speak, so that when the tequila is resting, it's going to naturally bring those notes of the coffee, and those subtle sweetnesses and those dark chocolate notes and those nutty notes. How does it bring those in naturally without overpowering it and complementing the tequila? Because at the end of the day, that's what aging is all about, right? It's about to complement the base of the juice. And Ileana Partida makes a fantastic tequila. Her Blanco is amazing. And I think that, me, if I'm going to start playing on the lines of innovation, my number one goal is to be respectful of the juice and really just complement that as best I could.
I love that. Can you, for our listeners who are tequila curious, right? And maybe have never witnessed or researched that resting of the tequila in the barrels. Can you talk specifically about that? Because, we're talking about aging with coffee. I think some folks might think that it's just right in like a jar of beans or something. So can you paint that picture of what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So, just like anything else, you want to, you have to get the wood to bring in these characteristics. So, coffee barrels aren't a thing, right? It's not something that anyone's ever really done. And people have, they put beans in barrels and they've roasted beans in barrels, and they bring on those oils and stuff. But I didn't really want to do it that way. I felt that, there needed to be it's a little bit more, I shouldn't say a little bit, it's a lot more complex to do it the way that we do it. But how we do, we actually age all of our barrels. So imagine you've got brand new barrels that are char number 3. For those that don't know, that means that they char the wood to a level 3. It's a 1 to 5. So 3 is basically in the middle. Then we fill every single barrel with cold brew first. So we actually have a roast specific to our usage. You can drink it before it goes into the barrels. I would tell you that you'll either going to want either going to want to run through a wall or shit your pants. It's fully intense. It is not a cold brew that you just put on some ice and you walk around the mall with. This is a pretty intense cold brew, but it's designed specifically for our roast. It's in there for a period of time. We let the coffee roast and rest in those barrels. And what it's doing is that wood now is absorbing the coffee notes. It's bringing in the coffee. A certain percentage of that stays into the wood. After it rested for about 30 days or so, we then rinse those barrels out. Unfortunately, we have to throw away all the cold brew. Can't be reused. We rinse those barrels out with tequila, and then we let the barrels dry. The reason we do this is to ensure that there's no mixing, there's no infusing, and there's no blending. We want to make sure we stay additive free, that we're not actually liquid to liquid never hits. So there's no liquid tequila that ever hits liquid coffee at any point. We want to make sure that those barrels are dry. At that point, the tequila does its work, right? A whiskey or a bourbon or any spirit you put into a barrel, the higher the alcohol percentage, the faster the extraction rate out of the wood. So we're cask strength at 45, which is really low. Most are around 50, 55 is typically seen at cask strength. We're at a 45, and the reason why we're at a 45 is because the extraction rate is much slower. And I found that we needed to be, imagine cooking a chicken at 1,000 degrees, right? You need to kind of slow cook it. It takes a little bit more time. And that's why we're finished for 3 months in those coffee barrels. So what it does is it's pulling those subtle notes, those layers of the onion, so to speak, of the barrel slowly. Funny thing is that the first month that the tequila goes into our coffee barrels, it actually tastes like shit. It tastes like pure coffee. It tastes like you took tequila and poured it over coffee beans. And that's because as soon as it got in there, it started pulling the coffee right away. And the coffee is now overpowering. And we need those extra 2 months to get through those coffee layers, get into the char, get into the oak, start pulling those notes. And that's actually the balancing effect. It starts to balance it out. So by month 3, which is a total of 5 months aged, we now have a perfectly good balanced tequila that's got, the agave forward and that lingering coffee note. It's almost gone. And that's what we want.
Almost like a whisper. A whisper.
Correct.
You could use that in your marketing.
I like that. I'm going to steal that one. That's actually really nice. Yeah. But it's exactly the way that it is. I mean, it's, again, if you went too overpowering, then it's just going to be just for the coffee people only, right? And that's not what we wanted.
Does this play very nicely then in like espresso martinis? I mean, how are you seeing this expression used in cocktails?
The espresso martini, I love it. Everyone loves the espresso martini, right? And I would say 95% of the menu placements that Quintaliza has is of the espresso martini. And I believe that to be because of just the natural, this is a coffee aged and then this is an espresso coffee, so we should just make an espresso martini out of it. Does it do fantastic? 100%. But I also think the espresso martini is one of the most messed up drinks out there. A lot of people can really destroy the espresso martini. So I love the fact that they use it for the espresso martinis. I love the fact that they use it for the old fashioned, which is probably our number 2 place for our expression. But what really gets me excited is when mixologists and bartenders start playing with it. I think when they start understanding what the characteristics of Quintaliza tequila are and those little subtle notes and how they can shine through in various cocktails, and they start exploring, that's when the magic truly happens. Because I think the espresso martini, the old fashioned, is like it's like the layup. I think even like at home use, it's like, oh, I love the espresso martinis or a margarita. I can make these. But when you start getting into it and you're really diving into the world of mixology, it's amazing how well it shines through. In fact, I've not really found many cocktails it doesn't work in. We've replaced it for a lot of things. And I think that it's just that coffee note is very strong. I mean, if you drop a cup of, a little couple drops of coffee into a cup of water, it becomes coffee, right? So those little notes are so powerful and they shine through and they complement so many different things. We're actually in the middle of making a cocktail book. It's 101 cocktails with Quintaliza. And I'll be honest, from the very beginning, this was neat, on the rocks, cigar, like speakeasies, lounges, like that was what I had vision, And it wasn't until a mixologist in Mexico got his hands on it and was like, Mike, there's so much more here. And he made me a tangerine margarita with it. And it tastes like a chocolate covered tangerine. I'm like, this is insane. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't really drink sweet cocktails. I don't really like sweet stuff. don't even really like desserts, to be honest with you. So it was kind of like this, wow, I could drink this 95 degrees poolside in Miami, right? And that was kind of like a big aha moment for me in regards to the cocktail scene of what Quintaliza really could be. That definitely helped us position our marketing completely different and start going more after this mixology thinking for sure.
Yeah, that's really exciting when it's so versatile and you're not just sticking to one lane. That means that there's something for everyone.
100%, 100%. I mean, you go to a bar and you look at it from perspective. A lot of times, spirits will come into a bar and they almost want to pull their competitive set off the shelf. They're trying to replace a product. Quintaliza is not trying to replace anything. This is an addition. This is an added, tool your tool belt for mixologists. This is something that you can make margaritas with, you can make palomas with, and Negronis with, and then you can get exploratory with, and really just start diving into the world and go, geez, I could use this for various cocktails, and the people at the table would have no idea. They would have no idea. You could have a gentleman drinking an old fashioned that's smoked and perfect, and he's loving it, and then run across as having a paloma, and then a frozen margarita with it, and it works. We've actually seen it in a frozen drink now in New Jersey, and I was like putting my head down at first, like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. And I had it, and I'm like blown away by it, how great it is. It's unbelievable. I mean, it just works. So, that was definitely a surprise to me for sure. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Could you give our listeners some advice who are, checking in and really would love some advice about being an entrepreneur? You've done a lot in a short time. You really have. And can you give some of your best advice?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm skiing right now, so I'm going to give the analogy of skiing. Being an entrepreneur is getting to the top of the mountain and choosing the trees versus the groomed paths. Right? There's no wrong way down the mountain. You could take the groomed path, and that's fine. And there people do it, and it's great, and they get down, they're successful. The trees are just a little bit more dicey and a little bit more rewarding and challenging. They push you to a level to where you get in there and you're going to fall and you're going to have some bumps and bruises, but it builds up you have to have that confidence to be able to get back up and continue through. And I think that's a lot like entrepreneurship, where you're going to get beat up, you're going to get knocked down, you're going to have days where you're going to be like, "No, I can't get through this. This is terrible. This is horrible." But I think you have to build, you have to believe in what the reason why you're doing it, what was the goal, what's the agenda, why are you even on this path, right? And believe in the confidence that you have that you can get yourself through it. But ultimately, don't be afraid to reach out for support. No one gets through anything alone. I don't care how great of an entrepreneur or CEO you think you are. The greatest CEOs out there are the ones that, they say fire themselves as fast as possible. But I think it's more deeper than that. I think it's you bring on the people that know more than you, right? And you learn as best you can from them. And you stay humble and you stay open and you listen to different people's opinions and suggestions on ways to do things, because your way is not always the right way, and you're having people around you that are smarter than you or maybe have more experience is the best thing for you to grow. Right? It's the little kid playing a league or two up in a sport, right? It's you're being challenged and you're learning around these kids that are 10 times better than you, but you're getting better. You're getting stronger every single day because of it. And I think that's the most valuable lesson anybody that's starting any kind of adventure can be, is just surround yourself by people that are just dominants, that, they dominate that field, that are great. And they scare you and they challenge you in everything that you do. And that's how you grow, right? Stay scared but learn, take it all in. Another real big piece of advice I would say about any business and being an entrepreneur as well is that, have you ever burned, paper with a magnifying glass when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah.
With the sun, right?
Of course.
Well, you never got the piece of paper on fire if you kept moving around, right? If you just were circling around the paper, it would never catch fire. You had to stop and stay still and focus. Let the sun really focus on that magnifying glass and get that little dot on the paper, and it would catch fire. That's how business is, right? You can't move around. You can't expect that things are going to keep going, and you're not going to catch. You're not going to your brand notice. People aren't going to start really diving into really knowing who you are if you don't stay focused, right? Keep moving around, you're going to lose that focus pretty quick.
Absolutely. That is some really terrific advice. I think that it's just super scary to take a chance, to be bold, to do something completely unique and different in a category that people tend to religiously just love. And it has such a strong culture as well with the Mexican people. So I think what you're doing is just very courageous. And I'm so happy that you are. There's
Thank you. Yeah.
definitely room for innovation.
Tons of room. Yeah. I mean, again, tons of room.
And with that, I just want to thank you so much for coming on Served Up to tell your story. And I want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah. Thank you. It was awesome having, being here and being a part of this. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I was able to, shed some light on what was going on, what I'm doing here.
Absolutely. Cheers to you.
Thank you. Cheers to you as well.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.